we see a lot of different challenges when it comes to inventory, and a lot of our customers are consistently facing these challenges and looking to find solutions and to further automate their process in order to kind of overcome some of those challenges. Here we're talking a little bit about things like having too much inventory or the wrong inventory on hand. Also, insufficient inventory to fill our orders. So what we're really talking about here is the ability to have the right material in the right place at the right time. And a lot of times that's really what it comes down to when our customers are having problems, getting inventory in the right location. When we have that, situation, really what the real challenge becomes is that customer satisfaction level and that fill rate that we're looking for. So if if we're constantly struggling with inventory, we're constantly expediting, then we're going to have, rush shipments, we're going to have, further expediting, and ultimately, with the increase in landed costs and the increase in shipping costs, we're going to start to affect COGS negatively. So, the real value that we have in optimizing our inventory management process is to really reduce those stock outs, increase customer satisfaction. And so today we're going to talk about a few different features within NetSuite that we can utilize to optimize our inventory levels and to make sure we have the visibility we need across our organization. So we're going to step over into NetSuite here, and we're going to take a look at some of the inventory items and features that I set up to talk about multi-location inventory. We're going to talk about the ability to trace inventory through the process. We'll talk a little bit about cycle counting, and then finally we'll talk about replenishing inventory using our reorder point features and how those work. So this is an assembly that we have here for a circuit board. A couple of things that I want to point out on this circuit board. First of all is our bill of material functionality. It's very important to understand here that for our bill of materials, we can have multiple bills of material, and then within those BOMs, we can have multiple revisions with effectivity dates tied to those. And then the last thing I want to point out here is that we have the ability to set a default BOM, but if you're in a multi-location environment, we also have the ability to set a default for a specific location. So you'll notice here I have a bill of material for Denver, and I have it defaulted here for Denver. And then for all my other locations within my network, I have a master default BOM that we would use. This is really helpful if we have different supply types in different locations. And this also allows us to support multiple BOMs for things like engineering BOMs and costing BOMs as well. If I click over here on my purchasing and inventory tab, I'm going to be able to take a look at my entire network that I have set up as far as inventory goes. You'll see this item in particular is only held at my Denver location and my OKC location. And I'm able to quickly look and see, what I have on hand, what the value and the cost is of that inventory that's on hand. A few other things I want to point out are our inventory planning parameters. Here, what you'll notice is I have the ability to set a build point or a reorder point for this item, and I can also set a preferred stock level. So this is like an order up to quantity for my item. In addition to that, I can set the lead time for my vendor at the location level as well as my safety stock. And the reason I'm going through this is the important thing to understand here is that these are set at the location level. So I'm able to have different values for different locations, and I'm also able to manage inventory independently by location utilizing this location configuration. So in addition to that replenishment information, I also have the ability to set up my cycle count information here at the assembly level. And what you'll notice here is that I have a column here for my next count date that I can manually set if I'd like to. And then I have a count interval. So these are A items for me, and I want to count them every 15 days in this example. You could have C or D items, or you could have B or C items as well. And you can set the count interval independently for your items and for your locations. And what happens when we process a cycle count is that the next count date gets reset based on the day that we count this for a date in the future incremented by that count interval. So if we counted this today, then we would have another count scheduled for 15 days from now. Now, let's talk about traceability. We do have the ability within NetSuite to have, as an example here, this is a lot numbered assembly. We have the ability to have lot numbered inventory items, and we have the ability to trace inventory back through the process. So to do that, I'm going to go into my report screen here, and I'm going to pull up a lot trace report. And I'm going to select a lot that I want to trace. We'll trace this one. And I'm going to set this up by my location or my subsidiary here for the USA. And I'm going to do a backward trace, okay? So I know that this lot is something that we built and sold. And I want to go backwards and see what all went into this particular lot number. So to do that, I'll hit submit. And you'll notice as the page begins to load here, I can start to see some different information about this particular lot. The first thing I'll point out here is I can see what my current total quantity on hand is, and then I can also see what my outbound total quantity is. So this is how much have I already shipped out for this item. So right here on my inbound tab, I can see that here's the assembly that I built this inventory on. And if I want to understand what was inside of that assembly, I can expand this. I had one lot controlled item that went into that. This was our solder. And then here, if I drill even deeper into this solder, I'm able to see what was the lot number of the solder that went into this lot number, and what quantity did I buy it in, and which purchase order did it come in on. So I'm able to see exactly which vendor, which purchase order, which receipt, what day I received that. And then now I could go, if there was a problem with this item, I could go back and I could do a forward trace on this item to see if it went to any other customers as well, maybe in a different assembly. On the outbound side, if I want to see the customers that were affected here, we see that this lot number was fulfilled to this customer on this sales order and on this date. And so this will really help us, especially if we had multiple customers getting the same lot, we would see that entire list here. I can take this information now that I have it, I can export it all, so I can do further analysis if I want to. And then, like I said, now that I've done a backward trace to find out where this went, if I wanted to take specific components, I could go and use those lots, so this lot number here, and do a forward trace if I'd like to. So this gives me visibility across and traceability across my supply chain, just to make sure that if I have regulatory requirements, or if I have the potential for recalls that might need to be notified to the vendor downstream, then if as those types of things happen, this tool really helps us to be able to get a complete picture of our lot controlled inventory. In addition to the lot trace, we also have serial trace capabilities as well if you're using serialized inventory. Now I'd like to walk you through the cycle counting process. So in order to create and process a cycle count, we're going to go to transactions, we'll go to inventory, and we'll do create inventory count. And the create inventory count screen is going to allow us to filter in on our correct subsidiary and location. We can select a date range where we want to look for count dates that are available. And here you see a list of different items then that need to be counted and when they need to be counted, okay, based on that count date we set at the item location level on the item master. So we can see we got different dates here from 9/1 out to even 10/1. In this case, if this item has been counted before, you'll see a last count date like we see here. And in addition to that, any of that classification information that we set up at the item master level for this location is also going to show here. The nice thing about that is that's going to allow me to filter down. So if I only want to count A items today, I can select that classification. I can select just the B item if I'd like to, or I can leave it blank and I can count everything that needs to be counted. So I'm going to go ahead and get ahead of the game here, and let's go ahead and create a count for this item and this item. I will put in my inventory variance account here. And I also have the option to count bins with zero quantity. So if I have bins that I'm going to go ahead and count, maybe I would have the potential to find something in a different bin. I can have those listed out if they're associated with the item. I'll go ahead and submit this inventory count. So now I have an open count, and it's sitting out here, and it has the different items and the different bins that they exist in, okay? Now, currently this count is out there. It has not been started yet. We do want to make sure that when we're counting inventory that we have a good snapshot that's created. So to do that, once you're ready to go out and do the inventory count, we recommend that that's when you go ahead and start the count. And when I start that count, it's going to go out and it's going to grab a snapshot of what inventory is in place, and then it's going to use that snapshot to compare against what we actually count. So for the user that's going to actually do the count, what we can do is actually print a count sheet for them to go out and use to collect their data. So to do that, we're going to go to Transactions, Inventory, and Print Inventory Count Sheet. We'll select our subsidiary and our location. And then we'll find the count. Here's the one for Denver that we just created, and we'll go ahead and print that count sheet. That's going to put this count sheet in a status screen, and here I can view the link to the file. So as we talked about earlier, here's a good count sheet. Now the inventory control person can take this information, go out onto the shop floor and do their counts, and then maybe bring it back to a kiosk and enter that information themselves, or give it to somebody to enter. When I enter that count, all I have to do is go into the inventory count, edit it, and once I'm in edit mode, I'll go ahead and enter the count that I counted. I'll hit OK, and I'll go ahead and save that inventory count. If I'm done entering the quantities, I can hit complete count. Now this process, based on the status, is completely controlled by our permissions under our roles. So typically the person that's entering the count and approving the count is not the same person that's going to approve of the count and post the adjustments. So you'll see here, we did have some adjusted quantities. We had some variances that were created here, and that's based on the comparison from the snapshot quantity versus what I counted. And here's what the adjustment looks like. So this gives us the ability to preview what our adjustment's going to look like. And then the person doing the approving can either reject that and have them recount, or they can approve it, which would go out and would create the inventory adjustment. Processing this inventory count, once again, will then update the last counted date and repopulate the next count date based on the interval we supplied at the inventory item level. So next, let's talk about inventory replenishment. Once again, we've set our inventory replenishment levels, our build points and our buy points on the inventory items and the assemblies. And in order to see what that looks like, I can go into Transactions, Manufacturing, and Mass Create Work Orders. I'll open that in a new tab, as well as Transactions, Purchases, Order Items. So here on the Mass Create Work Order screen, we have two tabs: Time Phase, which is our MRP supply planning functionality that you could utilize, or Reorder Point, which is part of our advanced inventory functionality. And here you'll see you actually see the same item, the circuit board that we were looking at, but for both locations, I can see what I have available, what I have on order, what I set as my build point, and what I set as my preferred stock level. In addition to that, it's calculated a quantity that it's going to recommend that I build here, in this case 31. If I'm okay with that, I can select the items that I want to go ahead and create work orders for. I can change the quantities here if I would like to. I'll go ahead and change this quantity. And then if these are the items that I want to go ahead and create work orders for, all I have to do is hit submit, and the system will go out and automatically create those work orders in the background. It queues up a process here, and then I can monitor it once it goes into complete. I'll be able to look at those 2 work orders. Now, purchasing works exactly the same way. On this order item screen, we have, again, a couple of different tabs, the time phase tab, as well as the reorder point tab. And here you'll notice here's some components. I've also got both locations here supported on this screen. I can even filter that down if I would like to. I can see who the vendor is for all of these components. I can find, and then I can start to look at all of the different quantities. So I can see what my available quantity is, how much is on back order, how much I have on a current PO, and then now my reorder point and my preferred stocking levels and how I've calculated the quantities here in order to order. If I like what I see here, I'm able to select all of these at one time. I can selectively select which ones, and once again, I can change the quantities that I want to add to these purchase orders. So once I'm happy with that, from a purchasing standpoint, I'm going to go ahead and just select a couple of these. We'll do these 2, and we'll submit this. So just like the work orders now, it's going to go out. It's going to give me a process screen, and it's going to allow me to see when that purchase order gets created. I'm going to refresh the work order screen and just kind of give you an idea of what this ends up looking like. Here's what this completed. It processed 2 work orders, 1 for Denver, 1 for OKC. And here's the work order numbers if I wanted to go out and review them or release them. The same way with the purchasing side. I'll refresh this. It's still working. Now it's in progress. And soon it'll complete, and we'll have the purchase order that we need in order to buy those components. So there's our PO, and I can easily go in and send that off to the vendor and make sure that I have a good date for when that inventory is coming back in. So thanks for the time today. This really was, wanted to show you some of the tools that we have with just core inventory management within NetSuite to manage your replenishment, to manage your cycle counting, as well as trace inventory from the start of the process when it's received in the door all the way through manufacturing and out the door to customers, so that we can get that smooth traceability, so that we know if something were to happen, we'd be able to identify quickly all of the affected products within the supply chain.